This is a response to Philo71 and his video, 5 Questions Any Intelligent Atheist Must Answer. There are a number of things I wish to address in this video before actually answering his 5 questions because I find so many flaws in it, I hardly know where to start. But one got to start somewhere. So here goes. First of all, it is not the job of any atheist to answer any question you think infers the existence of God. You should be the one answering these questions and telling me, not only why you think a God is linked to these questions but also why your God in particular is linked to them. The thing with these questions you have asked is that it seems you believe that if atheists cannot answer your questions to yours, or anybody else's satisfaction, that somehow validates the existence of God. It does not, because these questions could just as easily validate the existence of universe-creating pixies, or the flying spaghetti monster, or any other supernatural entity for that matter. I could answer I do not know to all of your questions as well, and it would still not render my position as a non-believer any less valid. Atheists are not the ones holding a position they need to defend, you are. Therefore it is your job to link the answer to these questions to God. Otherwise all you have is an argument from ignorance. Secondly, I want to address your condescending tone you have all the way through your video. You want to appeal to what you call intelligent atheists, yet you address your audience like they are 5-year-olds needing to be taught the world is round. Know your audience and talk to them like the people you think they are. More on this later. You also claim that atheism is a belief system, something you know atheists do not agree with. And the reason is simple. Because it is not. You say strong and weak atheism are, but they are not. Is strong or weak belief in Santa a belief system? Because if strong and weak disbelief in God or gods is a belief system, then you have quite a few belief systems too. Shortly into your video, you start drawing links between science and atheism. There is no such link, and I would please ask you to check out my video about atheism, what it is and is not. I could deny evolution and all of science, be announcing it on the rooftops, and still be an atheist. All I would have to do is to reject your claim about God based on insufficient evidence. This link you impose between science and atheism is a flaw that continues throughout your entire video. And by making this link, you are also dismissing your fellow believers who accept science. For these reasons, I am going to have to answer your questions from a scientific point of view because, as I have pointed out, your questions have absolutely nothing to do with being an atheist or not. So on to the first question, which is, are you not using chance the way Christians use God of the gaps? The simple answer is no. Science does not use chance as an explanation. There is of course an element of chance involved in the events that have happened, but does that mean it is reasonable to conclude they did not happen? You dismiss the roll of dice as a way to describe how chance works as not very intellectual in your description. Why is that? Because it is getting to the point exactly. Roll a dice enough number of times and you are going to get an unlikely outcome at some point. What would you say if someone came along and claimed this improbable outcome did not happen and you should stop using chance of the gaps to explain how the unlikely outcome happened? Would you not think that kind of thinking wrong? For this reason there is no such thing as chance of the gaps. Let me pose another example. It is quite unlikely for anyone to be murdered, but it happens. And when it does happen, we investigate the clues left behind by the event in order to determine who the killer is and what happened. Does who the killer is, and what events actually transpired, have anything to do with how unlikely the event was to take place and who the murderer is? Of course not. Insert any unlikely scenario of your choosing here, by the way. The point is, science works much the same way. Science uses the clues left behind by events in nature to determine what happened in the past. The unlikeliness of these events are not relevant to whether they happened or not. Chance is not used as an explanation, by anyone, except when talking about the anthropic principle, which is not science. I would agree that the method you describe is faulty. But it is not the way science works either. The science you are talking about is the description of natural events that you seem to dismiss simply because you find them unlikely. I do not know what to say about that. except for asking if you are going to dismiss lottery winners as well simply because the event of them winning was improbable. For the moment, abiogenesis, as you refer to, is a more or less unknown. We both agree that life came about on some point on this planet, but scientists simply say they do not know exactly how, but are investigating it. Maybe God did start life. If that is the case, there should be no problems finding the evidence for it. But if there is a natural explanation for something, which of the following requires the most faith? The belief that God did it by a method that is completely unaccounted for, or the natural process, which is composed of objects we can see, measure and understand? Does the latter even require faith? Try applying Occam's razor here for a second as well. Which one requires the fewest presuppositions? Also, you seem to think unknowns invalidates all of what science tells us. If everything was known, science would stop. Tell me, which is the most honest position, saying I do not know or making up something in order to fill up the unknown? And by the way, you should recognize that if there is a chance of something having happened, then that explanation will always be much more likely than God having done it. A simple application of Occam's razor again. In order for something to be a miracle, it has to be completely impossible for it to have happened, following the laws of nature. As for the God of the gaps you are talking about, do you not recognize that God of the gaps is a flawed position? How far would this God have gotten us if we had left it at simply saying, the universe is too complicated for us to understand, let us just assume God is responsible, and had done so, at a time when diseases, earthquakes and everything unexplained was attributed to God? Not very far. Because we do not know the answer to something, it does not mean that God did it, any more than it means universe-creating pixies did it. Or any other entity for that matter. During this question you also make links between evolution and atheism again. There is no such link, and again, you dismiss your fellow believers who accept evolution. There is no such thing as Darwinism either, any more than there is such a thing as Newtonism. There is the theory of evolution by natural selection proposed by Darwin. That's it. Your fellow believers might go round calling it Darwinism, but the ones you are addressing, the atheists and scientists, do not consider it so. You either accept it or you do not, but to the ones accepting, it is no more an ism than gravity is, and you probably know this. And who is it you are addressing? Then you go on simply dismissing the theory of evolution as not intelligent, which to be honest is simply the utmost display of arrogance. I will address this more later. Alright, question number 2, which is, why is there something when there could be nothing? I might as well ask you, why is the sky blue or why is the sun yellow? My guess would be a natural explanation for that as well. You prove God did it, in a way that does not conflict with reality as we see it, like you ask of your viewers, and to have God do something, violating the laws of physics by using a process that comes very close to sounding like magic, seems very conflicting with reality to me. The question is not why is there something either, the real question you should have asked, is how is there something? If you cannot tell me how God did it except simply assert that God did it, you do not know any more than I do, and I might as well invoke my pixies again for another non-explanation. Asking why implies there is a reason. Most atheists would say, there is no reason. Because your way sounds nicer does not make it any more true either, which you seem to imply. And for now, from a scientific point of view, I do not know how the universe came into existence. But I can tell you what happened since it did. Much like I can explain how to prepare, cut, cook and eat an apple, I can explain to you how the universe evolved, so to speak, ever since the Big Bang. Would you say that because I have no clue where the apple comes from, that my theory of apple preparation was any less valid? Would it be valid to conclude that when served this apple, cut, cooked and prepared, that because the waiter could not explain to me where the apple comes from, to conclude that not only had God made the apple but also cut it, cooked it and served it? For the same reasons that this is invalid, your assertions are no more valid than the apple guy's assertion. The universe may have had a beginning, but it is no more valid to infer that a God did it than to infer my universe-creating pixies did it. There is the very strong possibility that energy has always been there, and you should know that matter simply is energy transformed, and quite frankly, if you are capable of saying God is eternal and does not need a beginning, I am capable of saying that energy has always been there and does not need a beginning. You go on to asking more why questions as sort of sub-questions to this one. They are invalid for the same reasons I have just gone through. Please join me in the next video.